In cow pastures all over the United States, scenes such as this have been occurring in recent months. The new sport of hang gliding is enjoying a phenomenal growth, and the rolling pastures are frequently the training ground. The 1975 National Championships of the United States Hang Gliding Association were set for September 2nd through the 7th at Grandfather Mountain, North Carolina, where the peaks of the 6,000-foot highest mountain in the Blue Ridge Range make themselves an exceptional launch site. An open area near the lake at Grandfather Golf and Country Club provide a desirable landing. Being selected as the site of the national championships represented an almost overnight recognition for Grandfather Mountain, where only a year earlier, in the summer of 1974, John Harris of Kitty Hawk had made the mountain's first hang glider flight. For centuries, the Ravens had been Grandfather Mountain's principal gliders. The Ravens rode the updrafts and the thermals created by Grandfather's rugged peaks, rarely flapping their huge wings. The Ravens still use the same peaks for their carefree acrobatics in spite of the influx of hang gliders. Here, nature and man appear to be in harmony. The skilled hang gliders who are permitted to fly from Grandfather Mountain also always launch into a headwind, rarely a tailwind. The mountain and the landing sites are so oriented that flyers may go in either direction, depending upon the wind that prevails at the time of the flight. Grandfather Golf and Country Club, site of the hang glider landings when the wind blows from the north or the west, is known to golfers as one of the finest and most beautiful courses in the United States. It is a private country club, and great care has been taken to confine hang gliding activity to a landing area beside the lake. The flyers are anxious not to interfere with the golfers or to encroach on the privacy of the club, and the club members, by and large, are excited by the entertainment that watching the hang gliders has brought to them and their guests. The first flights from Grandfather Mountain in the summer and fall of 1974 were simply launches from the peaks and flights directly to the landing area in the valley at the country club. In the spring of 1975, an alternate site was cleared on the south slopes of Grandfather Mountain near the Blue Ridge Parkway to afford opportunity of landings there when the winds blew from the south and east. It was well that the new east landing site was cleared, for when Grandfather Mountain held its first hang glider competition in June 1975, winds were blowing from the east, and all the flights for competition were in that direction. All of the kites in Grandfather Mountain Championship in June 1975 were in the category of standard Rogallo, or the more varied design that is known as open class Rogallo. The Rogallo glider is named in honor of Francis M. Rogallo, a former engineer at the NASA space program who designed the Rogallo glider while attempting to find better ways to bring America's spacemen back to Earth. In the United States, national championships gliders are also scheduled to compete in the fixed wing category. Aircraft somewhat different from the Rogallo kites that heretofore were the only designed to fly from Grandfather Mountain. The United States Hang Gliding Association defines the open class for fixed wing gliders as those which must be foot launched with the help of no more than one assistant and landed using the pilot's legs. These kites may be carried to the launch site by any means, whereas the Rogallo classes require that the kite may be folded and carried to the launch by the pilot only. The national championships at Grandfather will be the first time that a hang gliding event of its scope and significance has been held east of the Mississippi River, and it will be a first opportunity for many to see open class fixed wing gliders perform. Hang gliding has its major beginnings in California, and previously the national championships were in the West. Among the California flyers who have already flown Grandfather Mountain is Greg Mitchell of Mission Viejo, who is the 1975 world champion. When one sees him in action, it is easy to understand how Greg Mitchell won his title as world champion. for his delicate touch in shifting his weight causes his glider to respond as if it were alive. Another Californian, Burt Ewing, in a kite painted like butterfly wings, won the 1975 Open Class Rogello competition at Grandfather. The overall winner in the June competition, sanctioned by Glider Sports International, received the Mutual Broadcasting System trophy from meet director Doug Heath and Mutual Board Chairman John Harden. And that winner was Terry Sweeney of New Hampshire, the flyer of this standard Rogello kite. The first person to soar at Grandfather was Tom Prokop of Massachusetts, who had flown the mountain in the summer of 1974 and came back to do the first soaring there in May 1975. Soarable winds are winds of 30 miles per hour, give or take 5 miles. And instead of dropping down immediately after the launch, the soaring kite goes up, almost straight up, with the updraft which is racing up the face of the cliff. Some of the soaring takeoffs are shaky, very shaky, but the excitement makes it worth it to those expert flyers who are qualified to fly from the high cliffs, such as those on Grandfather, and in 30-mile-per-hour winds. Grandfather's endurance record of more than 2 hours of continuous soaring was set by Steve Cohn in June 1975. Flyers who have soared at Grandfather believe a record of much longer duration is possible there, and that new records will probably be established by the end of 1975. One of the most frequently asked questions about hang glider competitions, such as the Nationals at Grandfather Mountain in September 1975, is how are the flyers scored? How do you know who wins? Well, generally speaking, most of the hang glider competitions use a point system, and each pilot is given points for his performance in target landing, in flight duration, and in the category of freestyle. Frequently, freestyle means that the pilot is on his own to perform whatever intricate maneuvers he chooses en route from a given takeoff point to a designated landing site. There are wing overs, there are 360-degree turns, and sometimes there are even smoke bombs as the pilots ham it up, hoping to appeal to the imagination of the judges. All launches are not easy ones, not by a long shot. And the same statement can be made for landings. In its first year of hang gliding, however, Grandfather Mountain had a remarkable safety record, suffering only one broken ankle in all of the hundreds of jumps that were made from its peaks. Hang gliding is only as safe as the skills and the judgment of those who participate in it. One has to be impressed with the knowledge of flying and the dedication to the sport that are consistent traits of the nation's best pilots who fly at Grandfather Mountain. Almost invariably, hang glider pilots realize that their good health, in fact their survival, depends upon being physically fit and mentally alert during flight. They refuse to let alcohol or drugs impair their reaction time when they are behind the control bar, a show of wisdom that might be desired for all society. The hang glider finds his kicks and his thrills by flying, by being high above the earth under his own power and the power of free breeze. In his flight, no petroleum is being squandered, no air is being polluted, no noise level is being shattered to interrupt the tranquility of his surroundings. Speaking of surroundings, Mildred the bear is Grandfather's mascot, and her environmental habitat is midway from launch site to landing area when the wind blows from the east. Glider pilots never seem to want to drop down at the halfway point, however, though Mildred and her family are remarkably tame. Everyone seems to agree that it is best to make it all the way to the designated area. Hang gliding caught on so quickly as a sport at Grandfather Mountain that in the summer of 1975, arrangements were made to have daily flights at 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and 3 p.m., May through the month of October, weather permitting. These daily flights from Grandfather's Peaks are made by instructors from Freedom Sports and Kitty Hawk Kites, two organizations that give lessons in hang gliding in the area. The exhibition flights by the instructors has provided a showcase for their new sport, and it has given Grandfather Mountain's visitors many sightseeing thrills and picture opportunities that will be hard to forget. What do hang glider pilots look for in a site for their flying? Why was Grandfather Mountain chosen as the first place in the eastern part of the United States for the national championships? Well, there are a few basic features that almost any good site must have. First of all, the top of the mountain must be accessible, preferably by car, so that the kites can be carried close to the point of launch. The launch site must be elevated enough to give good clearance above the trees and other obstructions on takeoff, and high enough above the landing area to give time for a flight of a few minutes' duration on the way down. The landing site must face the prevailing winds, and uniquely Grandfather Mountain's rugged peaks face the prevailing winds from two directions, and in both directions there are desirable landing sites at the bottom of the mountain. Hang glider pilots live in mortal fear of power lines, and at Grandfather Golf and Country Club, all of the utility lines, both electricity and telephone, have been buried underground, which is another big plus. In America's bicentennial year of 1975-76, hang gliding is enjoying astounding growth. But what would the founding fathers have said 200 years ago if a man had zoomed by in a kite, well over a century before the Wright brothers' first flight on the coast of North Carolina? For those who would say there are no frontiers left to conquer, that there is nothing new under the sun, the brand new sport of hang gliding stands as a contradiction. Grandfather Mountain, North Carolina, site of the National Championships of the United States Hang Gliding Association in September 1975, is a beautiful place for it. But the cow pastures where people learn are just as important. Whether you are a spectator or a flyer, you may well become addicted to hang gliding. It is here to stay.